second in a series that is based on the book by Michael Bernard Beckwith that is called The Answer Is You. And so this chapter that we're looking at today is chapter 2, and it's about tapping the roots of happiness. And so in class, we're doing a class that's based on the book right now. In class, we talked this week about what happiness means. And we decided that happiness doesn't necessarily mean being elated or being absolutely gleeful or being jubilant. It isn't necessarily way up here. But that happiness, true happiness, is really about having a sense of well-being. It's about having a sense of peace and ease with what's going on in our lives. It's about being able to tap into and experience that innate joy that is innate to our very being and that is always in our heart. And so when I looked in the thesaurus, I looked up the word happy, and what it said was blessed, content, glad, joyful, light, sunny, gratified. Does anybody want to feel those things? Light and sunny and gratified, peaceful and at ease with what's going on in your life. And so the title of my talk today is just that, tapping into the root of happiness. But what that means to me, if we are able to tap into the root of happiness, that also means that sometimes we must not be tapping in. But if we can indeed tap into a root of happiness, that must mean that it's always within us. That happiness or joy or that sense of ease and well-being is, and the sunny disposition is always within us and that we can tap into it. And so if that's the case, if that source of happiness is always within us, why don't we feel happy all the time then? I think the biggest culprit why we don't feel happy is when the world and the things in our life don't match up with what we want. They don't match up with our preferences and with our desires. That means then when people in our lives are behaving in ways that we don't think they should be behaving, somehow that steals our happiness. When your neighbor or your boss or your children or your spouse or the president or the drivers on the freeway aren't acting like you think they should act, what happens then is we get angry or frustrated and we feel not happy. Anything but at ease and content and light. And so that looks sometimes like your spouse doing something that you don't like. And so in turn, you get irritated and angry and don't feel happy. And then, do you sometimes stay there for hours? Or do you sometimes stay there for days, even though what happened was a very short time span? Or if the person cuts you off on the freeway, do you get irritated and angry and not give them the peace sign? And then stay that way, frustrated and angry? Or if someone steals your parking space as you're about to pull into it, you get grouchy and mad and lose that sense of peace and ease and well-being and happiness, and then tell the next 2 or 3 people that you see how mad you are that that person took your space, and you stay unhappy for a while. The truth is, none of those things have caused your unhappiness. We have given away our happiness in those moments. And so I think about a time when I was going to school at Long Beach City College, and parking was always a challenge. And so what I would do often is get there early and pull into the parking lot and sit and wait for someone to leave class. And so you could come down this big lane and turn all the way, and it was 2 lanes of parking. And so I would sometimes stay at the beginning or sometimes get right to the curve and sit and wait. And so one day I'd been waiting probably 7 minutes or something like that, and I see someone walk out of class, and she goes to like the second to the last space in the entire parking lot. So all the way down and back around. Yay! So I start to go, I get about halfway down the lane, someone pulls in the exit and goes the wrong way against traffic and pulls into that parking space in front of me. I was furious. I pulled up and said, "You can't do that." And she says, "Oh yeah? Well, I just did," and walks away. I was mad for I don't know how long after that. But the truth is, she didn't make me mad. I gave my happiness away because of that. And so in Buddhism, they teach that the cause of all suffering, so the cause of unhappiness, is attachment. Attachment to things being the way we want them to be, and attachment to things not being the way we don't want them to be. And so the answer in Buddhism then is non-attachment. Not being attached to things being a certain way, but just going with the flow and allowing things to be how they are. And I've practiced it before, and it absolutely works. I know I was with my mom and her husband one time up in Washington, and we were going to lunch, and there was traffic, and he starts grumbling and getting mad, and I'm not attached to what the traffic does. I'm thinking to myself, we're all together. We don't have a reservation. We're not starving. Why get irritated? It's so clear when you're aware of that to watch people get irritated. It's not causing their irritation. And so I read a story that I'd love to share with you this week that speaks to all of this. It says, one day my wife Cindy refueled our car at a filling station in a Texas town. Instead of driving up to the self-serve pump, she accidentally pulled up to the full service. She didn't realize the luxury service cost at an extra 50 cents a gallon until she'd paid for the gas. Later, she told me how the station had hiked the prices on their full service. The extra 50 cents a gallon surely had to be a violation of some law. I thought, and I quickly calculated the extra $7 she spent on full service, which would have taken our vehicle 128.33 miles. Would have taken us that much further down the road if she had bought the self-serve gas. The full-service gas station, it was robbery, and it had me fuming for several hours. As I was mulling over this terrible injustice, God showed me what I had done. I had sold my joy for $7. I never realized how cheaply I would surrender something so valuable. I had exchanged my joy for $7 worth of gas. It's so easy to see in that example. $7? Is $7 worth giving up your happiness? Is a parking space worth giving up your happiness? But when it's only $7, it's just so easy to see that. So what if we practiced non-attachment? What if we practiced not being attached to the world being responsible for our happiness? Just that the world is not responsible for your happiness. I think what happens sometimes is we think that happiness is an emotional reaction to something that goes on outside of us. Well, it can be an emotional reaction to what's going on inside of us, but just like we can pull up love from inside of us and bring it into a situation that isn't loving, when your partner is being a ding-dong, you can still pull up love and be loving. Or when you find yourself out in the world in situations, maybe at work where people aren't really being peaceful, you can pull up your own sense of peace. You can do the same thing with happiness, with joy, with a sense of well-being. It's inside of here. That source is inside of us. And so in this book study we're doing, and in this chapter, Michael Beckwith gives us 6 tools that we can use in order to tap into that happiness, in order to have that greater sense of well-being. And so I'm going to give that list to you. It is spiritual practice, such as meditation and affirmative prayer, contemplation, spiritual study, and selfless service. It is to keep an affirmative point of view, like Harold sang to us this morning, positivity. It is about sharing your gifts and talents and skills, reaching out and being supportive to others and being of service, and practicing gratitude. And so we're going to look at those and talk about those a little bit. And so that first one, that first tool to tap into the happiness that's already inside of you is spiritual practice. That means meditating. That means doing affirmative prayer. That means going within and being in the silence. That means reading things that inspire you. Because what happens when we do that spiritual practice is we tap into that untouchable presence of peace that is already within us, that untouchable well-being that is always within us. And when we do spiritual practice, it enables us to move past those judgments that we're holding, to move past the fear and the concern and the what ifs and the anger and the frustration, and instead we move into a place that is timeless, that does not have words, that is peaceful, that place that just is. It lets us get out of that crazy monkey mind that we live in. It allows us to recognize there is an unconquerable presence at the very center of our being, and that it is a presence of love, and a presence of peace, and a presence of well-being. And so Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this philosophy, says in the Science of Mind textbook, we need spiritual experience, a first-hand knowledge of life and reality with a capital R. There is no medium between God and man, nothing between life and living, between heaven and hell, but an idea where we're focused. But an idea has no real value until it becomes experience. We can know only that which we experience. All great religions have taught truth, but it means nothing to us unless it becomes our truth. I can stand up here and talk about all this stuff, but it doesn't become real for you until you do spiritual practice and you awaken to that within you. Then it becomes real. Then it becomes something that you can tap into. And so Michael Beckwith in this book also says, nothing and no one can remove the fountain of happiness that is the ground of being, nor can they interrupt its flow. We hold the key to freedom in our hands when we become aware that we alone are responsible for our state of being. So the drivers don't cause the state of being, your spouse doesn't cause the state of being, the stolen parking space, whatever it is that knocks you off center. But going back into center in spiritual practice helps us find that place. And so I know for me, when I meditate, what happens for me is I discover in that silence that there is something greater than what's going on in my life, something expansive, something that is infinite. I touch that, and it's beyond thoughts, and it's beyond what's happening in my life. And in that silence, I hear, it's not auditory, but I hear in here, all is well, regardless of what's going on in my life. That's the thing we anchor into. That's how we rediscover our own joy and well-being. And we read things. Part of my spiritual practice is to read the book David read from this morning that I love, 365 Days of Richer Living. It's a daily read. And so I just chose one last night. When I read something and it helps me remember what I've forgotten when I'm out in my crazy life running around and doing all the things that I do. And this one says this: I'm secure in God. Nothing can withstand truth, and I am knowing the truth of my being today. I realize that evil is neither person, place, nor thing. I believe that God is the only reality in my life. I read that and I go, whew, I'd forgotten that God is the only reality in my life, and that which is named evil in there is illness and poverty and frustration, and all of those things have no reality. They are effects of causes that we have put in motion through our thinking. So recognizing that God is the only reality in my life takes me back to being able to bring peace into my life. Does that make sense to you? And so the second tool that Michael Beckwith gives us to tap that root of happiness is, like Harold saying, to have that positive approach to life, to have an affirmative approach. Because what happens when we have an affirmative approach to life is then when things show up in our lives that don't match our preferences, or when things seem challenging or difficult, we actually use those things as stepping stones instead of stumbling blocks. We use those things to give way to something greater within ourselves that we have not yet discovered. We use those things in our life for our growth and for our unfolding and for our betterment. So that positive approach might look like knowing that life is for you, or knowing that God is on your side, or knowing that in the end, everything works out, or knowing that there's a reason for everything. Whatever that positive approach that helps you keep an affirmative thinking when things come up in your life, hold on to that. That allows us to feel happy, even when things aren't as we would choose. And the third and the fourth ones are sharing our gifts and talents and getting beyond ourselves. Sharing our gifts and our talents and our skills and not thinking everything's about us, but sharing, being of service, being there for other people, shifting our focus. And so that could look something like being of service and reaching out to other people, as simple as holding a door open for somebody or helping someone with their groceries. It could be supporting organizations with your financial support that you believe in, that are doing good works in the world and that are in alignment with your values. It could be volunteering at the soup kitchen. It doesn't matter what it is, but giving of yourself brings us happiness. And so I have a second story to share with you, and it goes like this. A group of 50 people were attending a seminar when suddenly the speaker stopped and decided to do a group activity. He started giving each attendee a balloon. Each one was asked to write his or her name on the balloon with a marker. Then all the balloons were collected and put in another room. A short time later, the delegates were let into that room and asked to find their balloon with their name on it within 5 minutes. Well, everyone was frantically searching and bumping into each other and colliding and pushing others out of the way. It was utter chaos as people were trying to find their own balloon. At the end of the 5 minutes, people hadn't found their own balloons. Now each person was asked to randomly collect a balloon and give it to the person whose name was on it. Within minutes, everyone had their balloon. The speaker then began, "This is happening in our lives. Everyone is frantically looking for happiness all around, not knowing where it is. Our happiness lies in the happiness of other people. Give them their happiness, and you will get your own happiness. And this is the purpose of human life, the pursuit of happiness." What happens when we help another person, when we are of service to another person, we automatically feel good inside. We automatically feel happy. We automatically have a sense of well-being just from giving someone their balloon with their name on it. It shifts everything for us. And when we share our own gifts and talents in a way that serves other people, we've absolutely hit the jackpot. And so I know everybody in this room has different gifts and talents and skills that they can share with the world. And I look around at people sharing them here, and I see that Pat Scott has used her amazing talents to paint this picture for us, and she painted one recently that says, "Welcome, we're so glad you're here." And Barbara Conant with her open-heartedness and greeting people as they walk in the door. And Yvonne McLaughlin has a skill of putting together lesson plans and being with children, and she put together the lesson plan for the kids today. We all have those skills. And Ray Bunch has this skill of being authentic and being real. And sharing that with us gives us the permission to be real. All of those are just people sharing what's already in them in a way that serves all of us. And so one of my favorite things in the entire world is to do this service, because I get to share my gifts and talents, my ability to share spiritual experience with you, or to public speak, or to share the things that I have learned and the insights in a way that serves you. And it's awesome. I love to teach classes. We're doing class right now. I love creating this sacred space that is safe for people to be vulnerable and to share and to have intimacy and connection and to do self-discovery. But you know what? None of those things are reliant on outside circumstances, because I can bring those gifts and talents anywhere in anything that I do. I can create space for authenticity and intimacy and a safe space, talking to someone in line at Target or talking with the waitress at Denny's. I bring those things forward from within me and act as that presence in the world, just like you do. You can share your gifts and talents in a way that serves other people anywhere you go, doing anything. They're your gifts and talents. And so that our joy then isn't reliant on outside circumstances, because we can bring it forward wherever we are. And the other thing is, when we do anything out of generosity, which is number 5 that he gives us, also it fills us up and makes us happy and filled with joy, because we're bringing the joy from within us whenever we do anything that comes out of generosity. And when we are in generosity, what happens? When we are being generous, whether it's of our time or our talent or our treasure or anything, what happens is subconsciously we are affirming to ourselves, there is enough. And we are enough. And we live in an opulent universe. And that there is plenty of good. So every time we act in a way that's generous, we place ourselves back into that flow of good and experience it once more. In turn, we place ourselves in the flow and we feel full, and our life is full then. And the last tool that he gives us in this chapter is about practicing gratitude. Does anything feel much better than practicing gratitude? Gratitude for what we have in our lives, gratitude for who we are, gratitude for what we have, gratitude for our life, and gratitude for every good thing that we have in our life. I know last night I was crabby in the early evening, and we sat down for dinner because I feel like it's all I ever do is work. Even though we'd taken some time out in the day, but I'd worked all day Thursday and all day Friday and all day Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's just kind of crazy. And so we sat down, and the rule at our house is we always do a gratitude prayer before dinner. Whoever's having the hardest time gets to be the one that says the prayer. And so my prayer of gratitude was, I'm so grateful that we got to take time today to go to a nature preserve. It was awesome. I'm so grateful for hours that I can take for time out. So grateful for my relationship. So grateful for that connection. So grateful for home and for my pets, and that we get to choose whatever we want to eat for dinner. That shifted my attitude 180 degrees. Whenever we're in gratitude, what happens is we get to re-experience how blessed we feel for the things in our life. We get to re-experience how happy we are that we have those things or that we are those things, whatever it is that you're being grateful for. And so if somebody gives me a bracelet and I'm grateful to get it, and then later I still think I'm so grateful to have that bracelet, I get to experience the joy of having that bracelet all over again. I also, when I think how grateful I am for that bracelet, I get to re-experience how grateful I am for the connection that I have with that person that gave it to me, and for our relationship and how I feel about them. And that goes for anything that you're grateful for. You're grateful for your pet that you have, and when you say, I'm so grateful for Skip, or whoever your pet is, all of a sudden it makes you think all over again about the cute things that they do, and about how much you love them, and about what you guys do together in your life. It brings up that joy all over again whenever we are in gratitude. And you know what? None of this that we've talked about means that you won't ever feel sad. None of this means you won't ever experience loss. None of this means you won't ever be frustrated or get angry or have a hard time. We are human beings, and those are a part of life too. But, so what I invite you to do is feel those feelings when they come up and allow yourself to move through them, because feelings have come to pass. They haven't come to stay. We always move through our feelings. So let yourself feel whatever is up. But like that saying goes, when you find yourself in hell, don't set up camp there. Keep moving. Feel it for as long as you need to feel it, and then when you're ready to move forward, practice one of these tools that he's given us. When you're ready to move forward, and if you're not feeling particularly happy in your life, you're not feeling like you have a good sense of well-being, then practice one of these tools. And I typed them up and gave them to you so you could take them home. They're on the back of your insert. Practice one of those tools like doing spiritual practice. Sit down and meditate, or do an affirmative prayer, or do some spiritual study where someone can remind you of the truth that you've forgotten. Be of service. Keep an affirmative point of view. Remember something like life is for me even though this isn't what I would choose. God is on my side. Whatever helps you keep that affirmative point of view. Share your gifts and your talents, especially in a way that serves other people. Reach out and be supportive and be of service, and practice gratitude. And as you practice those things, and practice them on a regular basis, even when things are going well, then you'll be living in an atmosphere of your own well-being. That atmosphere of well-being that is always present right here in the joy that is always available. And so blessings to each and every single one of you on this path of self-discovery and discovering that infinite presence of love and peace and joy and well-being that is always inside of you. Blessings to all of you. And so I invite you to join me in an affirmative prayer right now. And so how good it is to answer the call of our own spirits that call us home to this place of remembrance, this place of absolute connection with that infinite one, this place where there is no end to the divine and no beginning to where we start, that there is simply this merging and this melding and this one. And so I recognize that this infinite one that is life itself, that is the good itself, that is love and peace and light and joy, that this presence is everywhere present in and through everything all of the time. That this one is expressing itself as everything on this planet, everything that has ever been, everything that ever will be, and is expressing itself as that which has not yet come into being. That infinite presence of light and love and joy, we live and move and have our beingness within. And that infinite presence lives and moves and has its beingness within us and through us and as our very lives. And so today we tap into that joy that is always closer than breath and nearer than hands and feet. We tap into that innate sense of well-being that is always within us. We let go of attachments to the world being responsible for our happiness and our well-being, and instead allow ourselves to rest in this presence, in this life of bounty, this life of beauty. How good it is to remember and to be resting in that place. And so it is with a heart filled with gratitude for all that we have and for all that we are and for all that we will be that I release this prayer into the creative womb of this universe, that thing we call law, knowing that right now it is unfolding as so, simply because we have turned to it and invited it into our lives. And so this is the experience that we have today and tomorrow and the next day and the next. Peace and joy and well-being, all wrapped up into the sense of happiness. And so I give thanks to this entire universe and this presence within me for this. And so I release this prayer and I let it be, and so it is.